left.
Our old reports had all kinds of temporal markers for the time that we're at right now. And this is where we have the big crash of Western civilization. This crash of Western civilization is basically the end of the world as we knew it, and we're not going back. Now, we've already recognized that that's occurred since 2019 or 2020 with the thing, right? And so we're not going back. There is no return to that old form of life. We're now in this new normal, and the new normal is going to be very disruptive, and it's going to be even more disrupted and disruptive to us emotionally.
But I know the truth. There's no going back. You've changed things. Forever. Don't talk like one of them. You're not. Even if you'd like to be. To them, you're just a freak. Like me. They need you right now. When they don't, they'll cast you out. Like a leper. See, their morals, their code. It's a bad joke. Dropped at the first sign of trouble. They're only as good as the world allows them to be. I'll show you. When the chips are down, these civilized people, they'll eat each other. See, I'm not a monster. I'm just ahead of the curve.
Going forward here from this point on, because we're in that point of our reality when the central bank itself and the system that the central bank has set up is under attack, okay?
Those mob fools want you gone so they can get back to the way things were.
And this is a good thing. The central bank all of the central banks on the whole planet are owned by the Rothschilds, right? The Rothschilds. Rothschilds. So it's a crime family, all right? So these are Khazarians. These are part of the Khazarian mafia, very big in the Khazarian mafia, and they own and control the central banking system throughout the whole planet. And that system is crashing now. They don't have a cover story like with nukes flying around. That's what they're trying to gin up as rapidly as they can in the Ukraine. Now, in the Ukraine, it's not going to get any worse than it is now. The Russians are not invading. This is an incursion. This is a policing action. This policing action has very, very specific goals. It has to clear out the biolabs, which are a threat to the Russian people and to everybody else. It's to capture the scientists and the information that was held in those biolabs. And when they clear out the biolabs and capture them, they have to be very careful that they don't disturb things.
There's nobody left to send them.
Just the beginning. He'll be using the train. The monorail follows the water mains to the central hub, and I'm gonna stop him from loading that train.
The biolab becomes a problem. So you can't just go and blow the shit out of it, right? And then also they have to get rid of all of these Nazis. Now these Nazis are not like German guys, okay? Even in World War II, the worst of the worst were Ukrainian Nazis. This is because the whole Nazi idea is comes from the Khazarian mafia, and it goes way back, like into the 1800s, back to the period of time that they Illuminati, in the form of the Freemasons, had Albert Pike doing this design for the three world, and then the pandemic, and then the global government, and the elimination of white people. All of this was within their structure, within the work that they gave to Albert Pike. Albert Pike was something of a twisted genius as a military guy, as a general fellow. Anyway, so we have here the Rothschilds as part of the Khazarian mafia. Their structure, the central banking structure itself, is under attack, okay? It's under attack as it is crumbling. So it's under attack by exposure. Not only weird shit like this here, not only internet nutters, but actual facts coming out as to how twisted and evil and corrupt and so on all of these fuckers are, especially since Ukraine was this like central hub of all of their corruption. And so we have sort of a lumpy Ukraine here, and we find out that Putin is not invading. He's not bombing the shit. He's not destroying infrastructure. He's not out killing civilians. The Ukrainians themselves bombed that theater. To blame it on Putin, they're trying to gin up another nuclear kind of a thing. We see that Putin is only attacking those areas where there are biolabs that had been situated around the edge of Ukraine as it faced into Russia. And these guys are so twisted, they've been sending in deliberately infected birds, trying to kill all of these birds in Russia by sending in birds that had bird flu, just releasing the flocks and basically making them fly towards Russia. It's like some other kind of CIA shit like we had here in this country where the CIA was trying to get birds to drop bombs on Castro or some damn thing, some weird thing like that. This is back in the 50s. Anyway, though, and the CIA is Khazarian mafia as well. Let's not forget. Okay, they're part of this deep state. Okay, so the central bank is the deep state. The deep state only exists because, and that's an equivalency, not an equals, but the deep state only exists because the central bank can bribe it, okay? Now, the central bank's ability to bribe is reduced by the amount of purchasing power you actually have in each of your monies, okay? And so way back in 1913, they could bribe people with just like a $1. And it would go a long way because the $1 had a lot of purchasing power. Now, we only have a little tiny bit of purchasing power in, like, say, $20. And it's getting worse because, the cost of fuel, right? So if you give somebody a $20 bribe, it gets in 4 gallons of gas. Not much of a bribe. So you need a lot of $20. So the central bank has been inflating their own currency. Bear in mind, the central bank never, ever, ever, ever fights inflation. They never fight inflation because that is their product. That's the only thing the central bank can produce. Also, so now bear in mind that our central bank and all other central banks are a scam. So the Rothschilds, in the form of the Khazarian mafia, has blackmailed, killed, or threatened politicians to get the legal right to produce the dollars that you use and to charge you interest for the use of them. So right off the bat, when you get $1 here, you owe them $1.02 because that 2 cents is their inflation. That's their fee for producing that dollar and letting you use it. And it's like, well, wait a second, it's a USA dollar. What the fuck, And so, yeah, you see, it's a scam. And that these guys twisted the politicians way back in, and they've done it 3 times in this country, and it's been kicked out 3 times. Andrew Jackson killed the second bank. We're in the third bank that was allowed by Woodrow Wilson, whose daughter was threatened. They killed they blew up the Titanic and all these kind of things were done to cause the conditions that allowed the Rothschilds to get their central bank back in the United States. Because there's something about the central bank. If you have this right legally granted to you by the scum politicians, guess what else you get? You get the right to collect this interest by tax. So you get to tax the populace in order to collect your interest. And over time, the amount of inflation, the amount of your fees that you put on here grows. Because guess what happens? In order for us guys to pay off this $1.02, we need to borrow another 2 cents. But we end up borrowing more than that. We end up borrowing another $1 or another couple of dollars, right? Let's just say that we borrowed $3. Well, when we borrow those $3 and we pay back this $1.02, we owe because of inflation rising, and this is a hypothetical example, and because of purchasing power falling, as we continue to use this system and borrow $3 on $3, we don't owe $3.06. So it's not just simply $3.06 that we owe; it's $3.10 because of the effective flow upward of inflation and downward of purchasing power of the units that we're actually borrowing. Over time, we get to the point where we arrive where we're at now, where 99.9% or cents out of every dollar purchasing power is gone. Totally gone. So you got very little purchasing power compared to 1913. Yet you're still expected to pay the interest rates that are nominally and notionally accumulating. In order to clear this system, in order to get the Rothschilds, who are also in charge of the World Economic Forum, and Klaus, our favorite Dr. Evil, Klaus the Schwab.
An evil petting zoo? Quite astute. I really am trying to kill him, but so far unsuccessfully. He's quite wily like his old man.
Dr. Evil, Klaus the Schwab, in order to get them their great reset, in which all of us schlubs will own nothing but we'll be jolly schlubs, they had to have some event, right? They needed a world war, they needed nukes or something, so that we wouldn't all figure out, oh hey, it's the fucking central banks and these Khazarian mafia assholes that are doing all this shit to us with this weird Babylonian money magic. Go and look it up, right? Anyway, so we're at the point right now where the central bank is going tits up. It's done. They have no purchasing power left in the stuff they're putting out. They're not ever going to fight inflation. The minute they really try by putting on these rising interest rates, look what happens to everything else. Hyperinflation, Bitcoin, hyperinflation, Ethereum, hyperinflation, meat, hyperinflation, fuel, whoosh, 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 whoosh. And the converse is true, right? As your fiat, notional numerics on your fiat rise, the value of your politicians fall. So look at how Biden is taking it up the ass on this shit. Everybody's giving him all kinds of hell, because it's finally dawning on him. Hey, something ain't right. So this is where we're at now. What's going to happen is not what you're being told, okay? So you got people out there, this is the reason I'm having to do this, is because other people are giving you the wrong idea. And I'm not saying that these guys are idiots or anything like that, right? I'd come on out and say that if I thought that was the case. But what I'm saying is that they don't grasp where we're at and what's going to happen. So they're telling you that when this whole system implodes, which it is now, that, so there's basically two groups out there, all right? So there's the group of the Charlie Ward numbnuts, Simon Parks, Charlie Ward, these kind of people. And they're saying, oh, don't worry, you schlubs. No worries at all. We got the QFS, the quantum financial system that will know automatically whenever you want to do anything, and if you didn't want to do that, it won't let it be done. And all this automatic happens without you having to do shit. And, this external savior is going to come and rescue you, and you're going to get bazillions of dollars, and you're going to go, but there's a catch, you got to go and do these humanitarian things. And it's kind of like, well, wait a second, people, if everybody's in Kisara and everybody's in Nasara, nobody needs to do any humanitarian stuff because everybody's got gazillions of dollars, which tells you, gazillions of dollars where everybody has them, nobody has anything because there's no value there because scarcity provides value to humans. Okay, now, here's what's going to happen. All right, so that's group one, is the Charlie Ward numbnuts crowd, okay? So hang on. So we got the Charlie Ward group saying QFS, right? Which is a bunch of horseshit. That ain't going to happen. You've got another group out there that's basically touting a new form of global governance, all right, which is basically a new form of a central bank system. So it's the new central bank. And curiously, people like Russell Brand are pimping this. So I think maybe he's like controlled opposition or something. Their idea is that we would have a central bank we would all agree to as long as the Rothschilds run it. So, as long as the Khazarian Mafia runs the bank, they'll agree to allow us to agree to it. And so that isn't going to happen either. But you got a third group out there at the moment that's saying like massive poverty planet-wide. This is the end of life as we know it, right? Because they're saying this because the reason is they recognize that the central bank is in the kill box and it's dying and we won't have the central banks anymore. And somehow they think that when the central bank goes, we will have massive poverty. And this is not the case. Even if we did not have cryptos, when the central bank goes, guess what also goes? It's the interest scam that goes. You go into some form of sound money and you don't end up with hyperinflation. You don't end up with inflation eating away and making you into debt slaves. You don't have a debt-based system and things are a hell of a lot better. We used to have this in the United States prior to 1913. And it was very excellent. In such systems, you don't have inflation. Say you have a gold-based system, right? The only thing that can inflate that is the discovery, mining, refining, and distribution of more gold, all of which involves real actions, material, and so on, not magical digits. So nobody has to get involved in debt in order to do that kind of thing. And so you don't have the impact on the system that you do when you flood the system with the product of the central bank, which itself is inflation. So the central bank, in spite of anything they'll tell you, they are not ever going to fight inflation. They're going to die right now on deflation. Deflation is where there is demand destruction. We have demand destruction now. Shit's getting too expensive to buy, so you don't have a demand for it. If all of a sudden soda is, $20 2 liters, well, there's other forms of demand destruction that are also deflationary that are occurring right at this moment, including this shit with the attacks in Ukraine. Okay, so now here's the thing. So we're not going into poverty because we're going to have this stuff that all of us will agree on is sound, meaning stable or solid. I don't want you to think it means singing or, that kind of shit, right? It's not relating to sound, it's relating to solid money. This solid money is going to be based on gold, silver, scarcity of those, scarcity of Bitcoin, and effective cryptos like Ethereum, and will be based on the production of USA dollars, not Federal Reserve, not licensed by the Congress through the Federal Reserve to come back to you with interest on them dollars, not that kind of thing. So we'll actually get a new form of, probably we'll call them constitutionals, right? Or something, right? I'm just saying that we'll call them something else so that we're not dealing, so we know we're not dealing with the Federal Reserve notes that have gotten us to this point. Now, the central bank, the Khazarian mafia, they're not going to get their way. So they're not going to have these great resets. So what's going to happen is we're not going to get the poverty that these other individuals out in the truther community are saying, because these guys are under maybe they're doing it for clickbait, but a lot of them are under the idea that if the central bank goes away, the financial system goes away. And that is true. But the financial system is something we don't want, because the financial system is all that interest-based debt slavery. Well,
Hi. Do I really look like a guy with a plan? You know what I am? I'm a dog chasing cars. I wouldn't know what to do with one if I caught it. I just do things. The mob has plans. The cops have plans. They're schemers. Schemers trying to control their little worlds. I'm not a schemer. I try to show the schemers how pathetic their attempts to control things really are.
That supports that, from which these people have been parasitizing all of that blood and sweat and tears that they took in the form of interest that made us all debt slaves. Now, we're not going to go into poverty, but it's not going to be Gesara, Nisara, instant riches or any of that kind of shit, okay? It's going to be a long, hard struggle, very much like what the Russians did as they came out of the Soviet Union, because these same fuckers captured Russia and turned it into the Soviet Union and destroyed everything and sucked all the wealth out of it. The same Rothschild central banks, all of that are the enemies of the Russians going back to 1917 are our enemies that also struck us in 1913. And so,
Your little plan, I turned it on itself. Look what I did to this city with a few drums of gas and a couple of bullets. You know what I noticed? Nobody panics when things go according to plan. Even if the plan is horrifying. If tomorrow I tell the press that like a gangbanger will get shot, or a truckload of soldiers will be blowing up, nobody panics, because it's all part of the plan. But when I say that one little old mare will die, well, then everyone loses their minds. Introduce a little anarchy. Upset the established order, and everything becomes chaos. I'm an agent of chaos. Oh, and you know the thing about chaos? It's fear. Now we're talking.
And so we're going to go through the same kind of things that the Russians did. It'll take us slightly less time because there's more of us. We're a bit more prepared for it. There's people planning for this. But nonetheless, it's going to take years to sort all this shit out. So bear in mind, we will have a very irregular economy emerging as the central bank system collapses. That irregular economy will take some number of years for all of us to sort out and rise through. So don't count on QFS or any of that horse shit that Charlie Ward and his people are peddling. If you do anything like that, if you count on any of that stuff, you will make your life poorer because you will not be taking advantage of opportunities you've got now to get shit that you need now while you can get it, okay? So this is the point we're at, is that we're coming into the hard part. So now what you have to do is, if you're in the United States, if you're in Britain, which is tied to us by the dollar, if you're in France, if you're in Australia, if you're in New Zealand, we're all underneath the Khazarian mafia central banks, which are dying. We all have to think of ourselves as living in the last days of East Germany, right? As the communist East German system collapsed. We're in those last days. The wall has not come down, and we still have our Khazarian master central banks in place, but not for long. As that happens, we won't have an instant recourse of a sound money. It'll take us some time to get to the point where we have our constitutional dollars. So we do have some functioning forms of solid money now in the form of gold, silver, these kind of things as well. And even as I say, fuel, meat, milk, this kind of a deal, right? Because these have real value, as well as the cryptocurrencies. Now, so what's going to happen, what I expect to happen, okay, so this is, in my opinion, based on having read through all of that data and stuff and been doing all this shit for years, what's going to happen is that we're going to go through this period, we won't go into poverty because the SOC has set up a really cool thing here, okay? They set up this, they had Trump sign this deal whereby anybody that's an enemy of the United States that's been fucking with us, anybody that's been, anybody that's been trying to take over our institutions, anybody that's been involved in child trafficking, all of that, we can seize your assets when we convict you, right? We can just take it all. Trump signs it, good as gold. Okay, so this means that, once it's proven that Dominion machines did this, once they're proven convicted, you can't appeal this part, the executive order part. So even if you could appeal the conviction, it doesn't matter. Once you're convicted, you can get all your assets seized. So once that happens, the Dominion voting machine company becomes the assets of the United States if they so decide to seize them, right? And they can do with them whatever they want. This is also true of basically all of the money that is being seized now by Russia on behalf of themselves in Ukraine. Okay, so that's where Hillary Clinton and all these fuckers have stashed all their money. Bear in mind, Ukraine, the country, was the biggest, quote, donor to Hillary Clinton's Clinton Global Initiative to fuck everybody, right? And so Ukraine was the biggest donor. It's this big circuitous thing where they're raping the taxpayer of the United States, they give it to Ukraine, gets deposited in Ukrainian banks, circulates up a bit, and then the Ukrainian government gets it to the, or donors give it to the Global Clinton Initiative. And so she makes out by funneling them $14 billion and she gets 2 out of it, right? That sort of thing. Don't hold me to the numbers. Anyway, it's just a description, hypothetical. Anyway, so those kind of things, all of that money can be seized now. All of the property can be seized, all the assets can be seized. So hey, guess what? Bill Gates has just bought up huge amounts of farmland, right? Well, if Bill Gates gets convicted for fucking around and being part of 19, hey, all that farmland is now nationalized because the United States government, in whatever form we reconstitute it, this is post-Biden, can seize it, and off we go, right? So we can turn things very, very, very rapidly. We won't go into the kind of poverty that is being described as this 100-plus years of the central banking system. Bear in mind, they've been planning this shit for like several hundred years, and they've tried it 3 times in the United States history. They've tried it in other countries successfully, all of these different kinds of things, right? And so you can just follow this trail of misery that goes back centuries from these people. Anyway, so we know how the playbook is. We know how they run it. They're stupid. The Rothschilds, by the way, are inbreeders. All right. So in order to concentrate the wealth in the family, the patriarch of the family, way the hell back when, Bauer, who then set everybody off to be Rothschilds by having the Merkaba, red Merkaba up over his door, a red shield, Rothschild in German. He said, do the inbreeding, concentrate the money. Well, it dulls the mind as well. This is why these people are clever, they're manipulative, but they're not very smart, and so their system is coming unglued at the moment. As that happens, there will be these seizures. How the distribution goes from the seizures of that stuff flowing back into an effective economy, which is the flow. Okay, it's not the ownership of stuff, it's the flow. So it doesn't do any good to, like we see the Midas kind of things, right? It doesn't do you any good to own all the gold in the world if you're not flowing it out to people to get goods. What good is it? You can't eat it, etc., right? And so it is the flow of all of these energy in the form of the currency, the current, that is the energy current, the water current, the emotional current, the goods current between humans, that matters, not the temporary repository in the moment of whoever is supporting that flow along the way. So smart people understand that money is a tool, it is not a goal. The Khazarian mafia are not smart people, so they think of it as a goal, and that's why they want to own it all. And when it's all concentrated in their hands, well, there's an old French saying, when there is the rich and everybody else, we eat the rich. So, now is the time that we're consuming the central banks who hoarded all this money for over 100 years here in the United States. And so this is the end of them. But it's the end of the system globally. It's not, so none of this shit, none of the devolution, none of that stuff is about the 4-year election. None of it is about 2020, although that matters. We have to have the acknowledgement. We've got to dig into that, blah, 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 blah. Not discounting that at all, but I'm just saying that this is but a strategic avenue in the overall larger strategy against the blood-sucking parasites of the Khazarian mafia, okay? So now, as we seize those assets, there may indeed be distributions, but they won't be recompensed. So there's stories floating out there. You're going to get back all the interest you've ever paid. I don't think any of that's kind of like going to happen, guys. There are other ways that things can be done that don't involve government doling shit out to you. But in any event, so we're not going to get the horrific decades of poverty, but we will be poorer temporarily as we slide from debt-based money into solid money. The sooner we can get sound money flowing through the economy, the more rapidly we get picked up and start moving. And then it forms a solid base from which we keep going. And here's the beauty of this, okay? We don't know in our lives what it is like to live with sound money. All of the kids born since 1971 have no idea. They've always lived in a fiat money system that was unbound to anything other than the threat to hassle oil, right? It was a petrodollar, which is really the bomb dollar or the explosion dollar or the army dollar, however you want to think about it, because that was all it was the threat of if you tried to buy oil in any other currency. And that propped the whole thing up. So the Khazarian Mafia used the United States military to destroy countries, to invade, to do policing actions, which weren't policing actions. They were designed to cut the countries in half and so on and so on. Putin is doing a real policing action. We'll see the difference. So there's going to be a lot of information coming on out. We're not going to go down the poverty level the way that everybody's saying. We will be poorer temporarily as we go through this. The more rapidly we can get our shit together and get the sound money, the shorter the time is that we will all be poorer. So we going to have to learn to cooperate to come out of this in an effective fashion. But there are things you can do now while we have a bit of time remaining to improve your personal circumstances, but don't count on any Charlie Ward kind of QFS horseshit. And by the way, that's just another form of central bank ownership of the individual because it owns everything, all the assets. So, Charlie Ward is a pimp for the central banks. So just watch out for these guys, okay? Anyway, it won't go down that way. It's going to be quite remarkable. This is a great time to be alive. You all signed up for this, whether you remember it or not, when you took this life, when you accepted this life. Now is the time we got to grit our teeth and get to it, because now we're getting into the real work aspect of it.